Hope you had a fun caffeine break or caffeine fix. Please do take a seat. We are about to kick off our keynote. Please do take a seat. If you're still eating, if you're still drinking, bring your food, bring your drinks. We don't have any rules about that kind of stuff here. Please do bring them back to your seats. We're starting in 2 minutes. Please come back. All right. We are starting now, so please do take a seat or feel free to stand at the back. We've got a lot of chairs at the front actually, so please do grab a chair. If you see someone's bag there, feel free to put it on the floor and have a seat. Thank you. Please join us. Hi, Natalie. Good to see you. Excellent. All right. Okay, so without further ado, it is our keynote right after the coffee break. And the topic is the people factor, why leadership is your most critical skill. And our speaker today is Georgie Gain, who's the head of commercial at Law Squared. So big round of applause for Georgie, please.
Hi everyone. I'm just going to sit because I don't know if you can tell, but I'm pregnant, so this is where I'll stay for the next 15 minutes, if that's okay. A speech to legal leaders about leadership. It's so novel, isn't it? I did have major regrets about accepting this engagement and taking on this topic because it is probably the most well-covered topic at every conference that any in-house lawyer goes to. So I'm not going to bore you with your typical corporate leadership presentation, if that's okay. I'm going to talk about something a lot more personal and a lot more real. And it's that sort of uncomfortable truth that we all face about what it really takes to lead when you're in that legal leadership position. And I want to start with a question that changed everything for me. What do you do when everyone in the room is looking to you for answers and you have no idea what those answers are? And I see a few of you smiling because it happens all the time, doesn't it? As in-house lawyers, particularly as senior in-house lawyers, it's not an uncommon occurrence. But it can be a transformative one, because that moment, you know, that at times confusing, sometimes quite confronting moment, is where your real leadership begins. Not in the boardroom when you're confident and prepared, not when you've got all the data and you've got the perfect strategy, but in that moment when you're uncertain, perhaps even a little scared, and you choose to put other people's needs before your own. I'll take you back to 2016. I was an ambitious young lawyer. I had a great job with a great boss in a big household name company, very happy, and for some reason I left all that to take on my first GC position, which was in a greenfields gig at a fast-moving fintech where everyone was super bright and super onto it, and they were all aged about 25. So I was 30, I was ancient. And a few months after I started, we hit a major regulatory crisis in our UK business. Our licence to operate was on the line, and I remember sitting in a boardroom late one night with one of our executives, and he was losing the plot. He was dialing every contact in his phone, he was sweating and swearing profusely. He was spiralling into complete panic mode. And I remember my first thought being, someone needs to tell this guy to calm down. Someone needs to take control here. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks that that person was me. And I didn't have the technical answers in that moment. I hadn't practiced in the UK, I didn't know the regulator, I'd only been in the job for 2 months, and I was used to having an experienced general counsel that I could use as my sounding board. He wasn't there anymore, and I was equally overwhelmed. But in that moment, I learned the question that would define the approach that I've taken to leadership since then. What does this person need from me right now? That question became my compass. In that meeting, my executive needed my calm confidence, not my panic. The board needed a plan, not my uncertainty. And my youthful colleagues needed reassurance and direction, not my self-doubt. We saved the licence. But more importantly, I discovered that leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about choosing to focus on others' needs, even when, especially when, you're drowning in your own fears. I've since seen countless legal leaders in similar, even more high-stakes positions when C-suite execs and experienced board directors are losing it all around them. It's a punishing and often thankless task, isn't it? But invariably, the business gets through whatever the issue is because of these people's leadership. And that's what makes them indispensable. Here's the news that shouldn't be news, but somehow still is. Just because you have a title doesn't make you a leader. Your legal acumen gets you to the table, absolutely, but it doesn't automatically make you effective once you're there. One of the reasons for this is that our profession trains us to be individual contributors first. We were talking about this at a panel just yesterday. Billable hours, technical expertise, BD. It's all about personal performance. And that's brilliant when you're in a doing role, but it can actually work against you when you have to lead other people. Many of you in the room today are natural leaders who have figured this out intuitively. But if you're like me and you needed to learn it, the transition can be really hard. The challenge isn't understanding the change from doer to leader intellectually. That's the easy part. The hard part is making that choice consistently, especially when it costs you personally. I'm going to tell you now about a moment where I learnt what that cost was really about. A while back, I made what can only be described as a spectacular mistake at work. And I agonised about whether to use these words in the speech, and I asked Rohan for permission, and he gave it, so I will use them now. It was a colossal fuck up. Without breaching confidentiality, let's say I ignored my gut instincts, I rushed a critical decision, and I lost a significant client engagement. I spent 24 hours in an absolute pit of doom, wallowing in self-recrimination. And I probably would have stayed there for a long time, perhaps even indefinitely, were it not for the fact that there was a team I needed to lead and a business that I needed to run. There's this guy called Gilbert Anoka, and he's the mental skills coach for the New Zealand All Blacks rugby team. And he teaches this really simple framework for handling mistakes under pressure. It goes like this: you can either dump it, just let it go completely. You can park it, which is acknowledge the mistake, but come back to it later when you've got capacity. Or you can deal with it immediately, head on. I knew, for the sake of the firm, for the sake of the client and my team, that I needed to deal with this mistake. So, I organised 3 very uncomfortable, absolutely necessary conversations. The first was with my boss. I called him, I explained exactly what had happened, I apologised, I laid out my plan for addressing the issue, and he actually offered to meet with the client for me, which was a really kind gesture, but it was something that I declined because this is my mistake to own. The second discussion was with the client. I spoke to her, I was completely upfront about what happened, I apologised, and I let her see how seriously I was taking it. Her response floored me, actually. She was disappointed, yes, but she was also really appreciative of my honesty and my accountability. And she showed me a lot of grace, which I so appreciated in that moment. The third discussion was with my team, and this was the hardest conversation. I gathered everyone, I told them exactly what happened, I shared what I'd learned and what they could learn from it, and I let them see that this issue mattered to me deeply, but they would move on from it together. And then I logged off. I had a bucket load of Tim Tams, I played with the dog, I cuddled my kid, and I allowed myself to be human for a couple of hours. Next morning, I got back to work. And within a month, I'd filled the budget hole left by that mistake twice over. While we lost that particular engagement, that client remains a valued client of the firm to this day. Here's what I learned from that spectacular fuck up. The question isn't whether you'll make mistakes, you will. We're all human here. The question is, what do you do with your mistakes when they happen? All I thought about, all that mattered was, what do each of the people impacted by this mess need from me right now? For me, owning the mistake in this way was important for 2 reasons. 1, it was the right thing to do by everyone involved. 2, because I knew my team was watching. How I handled this failure would become their blueprint for how they own their own mistakes, when inevitably they happen, because they do to all of us. And that's exactly why I'm sharing it with you too. It is, without doubt, the toughest legal leadership lesson I have ever learned, but it's the most valuable one I've ever taught. Now, I've been fortunate through Law Squared to work closely with brilliant GCs who have mastered this mindset. And I've noticed 3 consistent shifts that separate the truly effective leaders from ones that are simply great lawyers that hold a nice title. It all comes back to that fundamental question: what do they need from me right now? First shift is from expert to enabler. Your legal expertise matters enormously. It's your foundation. But leadership starts from when you shift from being the person who has all the answers to the person that enables others. Here's what that looks like in practice. Business unit comes to you with an issue. All the most effective legal leaders that I've observed, instead of jumping into legal advice mode, they ask this question first: what outcome are you trying to achieve, and how can legal get you there? Sometimes the business does need traditional legal advice. Often they just need confidence or clarity on the path forward, and sometimes they just need a healthy dose of common sense, right? The question that drives this shift is, how can I enable their success, not just manage their risk? Second shift is from perfect to present. As lawyers, we're trained to avoid looking silly, to to always have the right answers, to maintain our credibility. But here's what I've learned. People don't follow perfect leaders. They follow authentic ones. The most effective legal leaders I've observed are willing to look uncertain, to ask questions that they should know the answers to, and to admit when they're learning alongside their team. One general counsel I've worked with has made this her superpower. She'll say, I should probably know the answer to this question. Leave it with me. And she's not afraid to deploy that phrase at all levels of the business, including in board meetings for her listed company. Rather than diminishing her credibility, this honest acknowledgement has made her one of the most respected executives in the entire business. Why? Because people trust leaders who are authentic about their limitations and are committed to finding real solutions. The question that drives this shift is, what does my vulnerability unlock in others? The third and final shift is from protecting to promoting. When you're an individual contributor, your focus is naturally on protecting your position, your workload, your boundaries, your reputation, your relationships. But true leadership means shifting to promoting, which is advancing your team's interests, even if it means that your own needs come second. Most of us have been here. You have to deliver difficult news. You make an unpopular decision, or hold someone accountable knowing that it's right for the team, but you dread it all the same. Maybe it's saying no to a project that someone's really passionate about. Maybe it's having that performance conversation that everyone's dreading. Maybe it's restructuring roles for better efficiency. And if you're really unlucky, it's a decision that you had nothing to do with making, but you've been tasked with communicating anyway. Lots of smiles when I said that. You know the personal cost, right? The tension in the relationships that you really value, particularly if, like me, you're a bit of a people pleaser. But here's the truth. Every leader faces this choice sooner or later. The ones who succeed choose what's right for the team over their own personal comfort. The question that drives this shift is, am I optimising for my comfort or their growth? And the answer should guide your choice, no matter how uncomfortable it is. Notice what these three shifts have in common. They all require you to step outside of yourself and ask, what do they need from me right now? Expert to enabler, what do they need to succeed? Perfect to present, what do they need to feel safe? Protecting to promoting, what do they need to grow? Here's what I want you to take away. Your legal expertise earned you a seat at the table. But it's your leadership mindset, your ability and your willingness to ask these questions during every interaction, that will determine whether you occupy the seat or whether you truly lead from it. The test of leadership isn't in the easy moments. It's when you're uncertain, maybe even scared, and you still choose to focus on what others need. When you log on at the end of today, or during the breaks, as most of us do, you'll have your first opportunity. Whether it's your CEO, a team member, a difficult stakeholder, someone is going to need something from you today. And in that moment, you have a choice. You can revert to individual contributor mode. How do I feel? What do I need? How do I protect myself? Or you can choose leadership. You can ask yourself that question that changes absolutely everything. What do they need from me right now? Thank you.
All right, so what some of you may know is that Georgie and I worked together, and I lived alongside her through that episode that she talked about, and yeah, That was amazing. Thank you, Georgie. That was brilliant. I've got a slide here, which I'd love for you all to take a look at. So Georgie leads the commercial and corporate team at Law Squared, and she leads a program called Law Squared as a Service. So there's a QR code there. Georgie's going to be here in her trademark pink suit jacket as well today. So if you need to find her to talk about leadership or to talk about anything that she does at Law Squared, please do find her. But yeah, that was awesome. All right, so we're going to break into our panels and workshops. So the panel here is what GCs want from their legal teams and service providers. And the panel downstairs is the power of an alternative legal career. So fractional GCs, co-GCs, side hustles, and more. But before you break off, we've got a video from our friends at Legal Vision. So let's play that, man.
We speak to in-house teams every day, and they're all facing the same challenges. Number one is facing budgetary constraints, being asked to do more with less. Number two, difficulties in being able to find good talent. Number three is being inundated with a high volume of business as usual legal work that detracts them from taking on the more strategic or business critical tasks which they should be spending their time on. Legal Vision can really amplify the capabilities of in-house legal teams, principally through our desk extension product. Under a desk extension, we become an extension of your in-house capabilities. You'll get access to a dedicated relationship manager and a dedicated team of lawyers who really work to become a seamless part of your in-house team.
We do that by investing a lot of time up front to get to know the in-house team, what their key commercial risks and legal drivers are, and we get to understand what their risk appetite is. Working with Legal Vision helps in-house counsel to be more proactive, less reactive, focus on those strategic, business critical matters, and leave the business as usual, everyday legal matters to us.
All of our clients interact via Prism, which is our matter management platform. It really does enable our clients to be able to interact more seamlessly with our lawyers, but also in-house lawyers really do appreciate being able to see all of their matters on one platform, be able to see what status they're at, and be able to understand also the value that they're getting.
Legal budgets have always been fairly tight in businesses, and I think over the next 5 years, with improvements and investments in technology, automation and AI, there will be a continued expectation that, well, legal teams will run tightly. Where we can help is to ensure that costs are kept low, but provide the support necessary to keep the legal team going.
I do believe that they also need to start partnering with legal services providers that really understand that imperative and are working for them to be able to deliver legal services more efficiently and cost effectively.
All right, so thank you to our friends at Legal Vision. So team, here in the Ninja Arena, we've got what GCs want from their legal teams and service providers. And then downstairs in the workshop space, or the secret room, we've got the power and alternative legal career. Fractional GCs, co-GCs, side hustles, and more. So if you're looking for that side hustle, trying to make a little bit more money, I think we all are, then head downstairs. We've got a popcorn cart downstairs as well, which is about to wrap up. So grab your popcorn if it's still there. And you have 1 minute to decide and head down. So make that decision now, please. And if you're looking to stay and you're standing, please do come forward. There are some seats on the right side of the stage and also right here on the left. So please do find a seat. Thank you. We'll start in 1 minute. Take a seat, take a seat. We're starting in 30 seconds. Take a seat. All right, let's kick things off. If you've made it downstairs, hope you enjoy the session on fractional work and alternative legal careers. If you're here, you're about to hear what GCs really want from not only their service providers, so all of our sponsors, event partners, you should be listening to this session, but also legal teams. So if you're an in-house lawyer and you've got a boss that you want to learn how to deal with, then yes, this is the right session for you as well. Introducing our speakers. So our moderator is Emmanuel Giuffre, Head of Legal at Legal Division. Our panelists are Alice Dillon, Head of Legal Risk and Compliance at Immutable. Ivana Kovacevic, former Group GC at Tabcorp. Joni Burns, Head of Legal, Regulatory and Compliance at Mabel. And Kylie Quinlivan, General Counsel and Company Secretary at High Pages. Big round of applause, please, for our speakers. All right. Okay, so if you just joined us during the coffee break and you don't know how it works, 40-minute panel. At the 20-minute mark, we'll press pause and open up the floor to any questions. We'll also try and take a question at the end. Questions get chocolates, and there are a few happy chocolate-eating faces in the audience already, so do join that crowd if you'd like to ask a question. But without further ado, Manny, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rohan. Yeah, so my name's Manny. I head up the legal team at Legal Vision, and I'm also the general manager, and very pleased to be speaking to this very esteemed panel of GC powerhouses on this topic, what GCs want from their legal teams and service providers. So a little bit of an FYI, when I looked at the topic, what GCs want, I thought it sounded a little bit like a 90s rom-com film. And so I actually started thinking about, what could have been some fun titles, and I came up with maybe, service providers, 10 things I hate about you, or how to lose a GC in 10 days. But we decided, maybe we'll just try and keep it a little bit more positive. So we went with that. And look, without any further ado, I'd love to be able to get a bit of an intro from each of our panellists. Let's start with you, Alice.
So hi, Alice Dillon, Head of the Legal Risk and Compliance team at Immutable. For those of you that don't know, Immutable is a platform business building blockchain infrastructure for games to build on the blockchain. So very much in the crypto space, obviously a really simple regulatory environment for me to work in, no shortage of complex issues to deal with.
Hi, I'm Joni Burns. I'm Head of Legal, Regulatory and Compliance at Mabel. We have a number of other brands in the health tech space under the umbrella Attain Health Tech, but our primary platform is Mabel, and we operate in the NDIS and aged care space. So once again, a really easy regulatory area to operate in at the moment.
Thank you, Ivana.
This is working, okay. I am Ivana. I similarly work in heavily regulated space. I'm Group General Counsel, and the last 15 years I was working in heavily regulated technology. I have led teams of up to 25 people, so teams and the topic here today is very close and dear to my heart.
Nice. And Kylie?
Hi, I'm Kylie Quinlivan. So I work for High Pages. So it's an online trading marketplace, and we also have a platform play. So we also provide job management services for our tradies.
Awesome, thank you so much. And as you can tell, we've got a very experienced panel, very different industries, and also just very different dynamics in their teams and how they engage external counsel. So I'm going to have a really good discussion here. But let's just get straight to it. And I'd love to hear from everyone here, starting with you, Alice. I mean, what do you want from your legal team?
I guess there was a hint in my intro. We work in an incredibly dynamic environment at Immutable. The regulatory ground is shifting like weekly, if not daily, if not hourly. I was on, and Twitter is my main feed for updates, regulatory updates. So I need in my team people who are comfortable dealing with that level of change and transformation, an ability to be agile, and also a level of scrappiness. Like, there are not answers in my space. So I need someone who is comfortable with that and can solve through it. Thankfully, I have those people in my team.
I love that. I particularly like that, you know, AQ, adaptability quotient, is going to be almost more important than IQ and EQ in this, you know, brave new world of technology and just changing legislation and all the rest of it. Joni?
Yeah, my focus when I'm looking to add to our legal team, which has grown a lot over the past year, has really been, yes, you need some of those hard legal skills. You need to know what you're doing, but most importantly, there is a focus on soft skills. Stakeholder management is probably the most important part of my job, and I need my team to be able to socialise and form relationships with the different stakeholders in the business and adapt their approach accordingly. Because we are in the NDIS and aged care space, we do have a lot of people from sector in the business, and whoever's in my team does need to be able to form those relationships and adapt their approach.
Yeah, and I suppose that's true, right? I mean, as you know, we always hear that legal counsels wear many hats, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But a really big one is moving away from just being the technical expert, but also, you know, developing those soft skills and being a bit of a power broker, or, you know, having to you know, navigate those politics. Ivana, like, what are the attributes that you look like? Yeah, I think we're getting another microphone. But yeah, what are the attributes that you look like when you're hiring into your team?
I agree. Sorry, that was too loud. I agree really strongly with the last point. I think when it comes to hiring new people onto the team, legal skills, technical skills are a must, but they're just the way to get in. And so the other thing I really look for is commerciality. And people say, what does that mean? And it means lots of things to lots of people. I think I look for two things. Can you speak in a way that the business understands? So, you know, no lengthy 20-page advice when the business is just looking for yes or no, but also the ability to learn what the business really does so you can relate to them. People skills are absolutely essential. That is how you get your message across. So how well can you work with a lot of different people? There's lots of people on the team. Can you teamwork? Can you influence? So that is critical. And I think for the one thing that I think ties a lot of this together and that you test for, especially when you have junior team members coming who might not have these skills yet, is their curiosity and willingness to learn. So you're looking for people who are humble, who know they don't know, but are keen to just keep learning. And then that goes to the agility quotient that you were talking about, the ability to cope with change as well.
Yeah, I love that, because, I mean, as a junior lawyer, when, you know, they're coming in an interview, it's so hard to test for commerciality. And how could they have it if this is perhaps their first in-house gig? But curiosity is a great way of being able to test it. Thanks, Ivana. And Kylie, what do you think? What are you looking for?
I think I'm going to reinforce what everyone said here, in that I think I look for strong communication skills. I look for curiosity. And working in, so I work in sort of a listed small caps, and I've worked in a couple of them now, and with lean legal teams. So you have to be able to work quickly. There isn't many of us. You really need to understand the business. The advice has to be, your advice has to be embedded in the business. We need to embed legal into product. You need to be thinking about compliance culture. And so legal on its own will just mean that people will work around you. You need to be accessible, you need to be approachable. If the business is routing around legal or routing around legal, then you're just raising risk. So it's really important to be approachable.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, look, just what you gather, if you were to draw one theme, it's definitely the soft skills that we're looking for, right? It's the person who's able to adapt, but also understand the business well, and then, able to act commercially. Great, love it. Kylie, would love to hear from you next. We touched on a little bit, we hear a lot about the changing role of the GC, having to wear multiple hats. Would love to hear how you see your role has changed over the years, and also how that has also changed the expectations that you have of people in your team.
Yeah, so I think this really follows on well from that conversation, and also from George's keynote, because the shift that she talked about is something that happened to me as I've moved through in-house. So just a little bit of my background. I came from private practice for about 10 years as a public M&A lawyer, and then I went in-house, and I've always worked for listed small caps and very lean teams. So sometimes in periods like one or two, and the one being me for various periods of time. So small companies. And I've also been on the exec team. And I would say the shift for me moved from when I went outside those, so in both of those roles I came in, they had M&A to do and I was in my sort of comfortable place and we were doing deals. But the shift happens when I moved into doing more strategic advice, and whether willingly or unwillingly, you sort of become also the ethical compass for the business, and that's quite a shift. So I built the risk management systems and the ESG systems for both of those companies. And I think that shift mindset happened to me when I moved from sort of, in some ways, thinking in the way that Georgia spoke, from what is the avenue of least risk, legal risk here when I've been asked to solve a problem, to what does the business need right now? That mind shift happened to me as we were moving through, and it often happens through those big events like those controversies. And I have a little story that happened to me in my last job. So we had an incident that ended up on the front page of the AFR. So we're talking this Sunday night. We're listed companies, so we've got a material disclosure. We've prepped for that. We've got a basic ASX announcement. Come Monday morning, I have my chair on one line, and I have our KWM corporate partner on the other, and we're just not aligned on what we're going to say. So we're so unaligned, it comes to 10 o'clock, and the ASX puts us into a trading pause, and which you can imagine is really panicked. And my chair said to me at that moment, he said, look, this is you and me, this is going to go for a while. We need to run this company, and we need to run this company in the best interest of our shareholders, and what resonates with us in terms of our values. And we're not going to be run by paid lawyers. That's not their job. That's not what happens here. And that was kind of the markings of that massive shift that I think happens at a point for GCs, and that's when I really think you become indisposable. So when I reflect on that, so when I think of, so for my legal team, what does that mean? What do I need from my team? It means that in my environment, I need T-shaped lawyers. I need lawyers who can read a spreadsheet. In my tech environment, they need to know the difference between EBITDA and free cash flow margin. You need to be confident enough when you're sitting there with a product team and they're going through the customer flows to ask the silly questions. You need to, interrogate marketing claims. You need to teach yourself the difference between structured and unstructured data so you can understand where the hell your data is going in through your systems to understand privacy compliance. And that's really important, and it sort of reiterates what's here is you need technical depth, but that's not enough alone. You need breadth. In my space, I definitely need breadth from my in-house legal team.
Look, before we move on to the next, because this is, to me, fascinating, I think it goes to the heart of what we're talking about here with, what we want from legal teams. Keen to hear from other people. How do you get people to really immerse themselves deeply within a business so that they do understand deeply the drivers and what actually matters for the business in any given time? Ivana?
I can jump in on that one, and here we go, it's back on. I'll have issues with this mic. It's just going to haunt me all day. Look, I think with high performance teams, you need to have, I think, high expectations and also high engagement. And so when it comes to the high expectations, you need to communicate regularly to your team what the objectives are. And regularly, I mean regularly. Things change quickly, so you need weekly catch-ups on what's important. One thing that I've done with my teams in the past that's been really helpful in terms of aligning everyone with the direction of the company is to take the company strategy, which is usually a one-pager, and it can be like 2 or 3 pillars, take that and create a legal strategy out of it, utterly aligned with it. So you'll have some key projects that the legal team is working on, not the shopping list, but literally pop them in to each of the pillars. And then that way your team always knows what's more important. So it helps with prioritizing matters as well. And it makes sure everyone's aiming for the same thing. But I think having high expectations and alignment is not enough. I think engagement, to me, is the absolute other side of the coin. I think if you have teams that don't collaborate well, they're the best legal minds and they know what they need to achieve, they don't achieve it unless they're working as a team. And so that's the harder question, and not here's one magic thing that makes sure your team achieves that. So I think it's a combination of really good listening skills. Back to Georgie's keynote, what does my team need from me to function better? And then actually get that feedback and do something about it. Communicating often, even if there isn't anything, there's no news, don't let silence breed contempt. Go and tell people what's going on, explain things, give people feedback, be kind, but also be clear so that people can improve. Be genuinely interested in your team members, give them opportunities to grow and then set them up for success. Yes, also team building activities are great, but I think without all the other elements, team building activities alone are not enough.
Yeah, just to double down on the laddering up into the company strategy point, that really resonates with us. We set really rigorous OKRs as a company on 4 monthly cycles, so the cycle comes around quickly. And so we set them at the company level and we set them at the functional level as well for every team. Now, if you're not embedded with the business, work is going to happen to you as a legal team. That's a bad outcome. That's a bad state of affairs.
What do you mean by that? Work's going to happen to you?
So if you don't have line of sight as to what's coming down on the product roadmap, you're not going to resource your teams properly. You're not going to know how to prioritise, to your point, Ivana. And so we're actually going through a planning cycle right now. And so what we will be doing as a legal team is going out to all of the functions, and it's about communication, having that connective tissue with your business. And sitting down with them and having them tell us, okay, what are you planning to build? What are you planning to do? What cross-functional dependencies are there going to be? What are you going to need from legal, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, in the legal team, we are building our OKRs to level up into the company strategy as well.
I love that, because often when you're hearing these panel sessions, it's about how do you go from the Department of No to the Department of Go. And I think it is the building those connective tissues, becoming more embedded in the business, aligning your legal team's OKRs with overarching strategies, and that's how you can make sure that you're not meeting resistance. You know, you're working with and you're driving that real value. Joni, did you have a thought on it?
Yeah, I was just thinking that as lawyers, we tend to want to, I think we're very diligent and we tend to want to be able to please everyone. And one of the things I always say to my team is, if we're meeting everyone's needs in the business, we're not doing our job properly because we're a cost centre. So one of the most important things I do with my team is make sure that they're absolutely across the strategic goals and aims of the business, and that we prioritise our workflow accordingly. And if that means that I need to go and have a discussion with an exec about where their priority sits on their very urgent piece of work, because obviously quite often execs are not aligned on what's prioritised. But if the business is really clear on its direction and that filters down into my team, then we can refer back to that easily.
Do you think in the role of the modern GC that it's true that legal teams are still a cost centre? I mean, look, on the balance sheet, perhaps, but don't you think that we're being a little bit probably a bit hard on legal teams when we are adding so much strategic value and driving that value, that connective tissue in the business?
Yeah, I think if you're still seen as a cost centre, you probably need to take a hard look at the value of your team and what you're adding. I mean, you don't want to be just added to a conference call because we need the legal input. You want to be at the strategic table where decisions are being made.
Or even ahead of the game, as you were saying, be predictive and not allow, to be caught off guard by a project, but know it's coming and then add value at that inception stage. Kylie, were you going to say something?
No, I agree. I think what you want to be inside a company is not legal says this, but let's go ask legal. Yeah. Right, so you're part of that conversation and people actively look for you and actively look for your opinions.
Yeah, love that. Okay, shifting gears. Love to hear Alice and Joni on this topic. So legal tech and legal transformation, I mean, it's all everyone is talking about right now, so we have to in this session. How do you see, the emergence of legal tech changing the role of GC? And what do you think that means for the next generation of in-house lawyers coming through the ranks? What are the skills and attributes they're going to need in this brave new world, in this new tech-driven environment?
I think as a starting point, they need to be able to adopt that technology. And I have been at pains to empower my team to do their own research and look at ways that we can streamline processes to increase efficiency within the team with the adoption of technology. But once again, going back to the earlier point about the need for soft skills, I think that those skills will become more important as we move forward. And as lawyers, we know the vision of the business and we understand that. And I don't think that technology, we're not there yet, doesn't really understand that. So focusing on being that strategic business partner and really knowing the business and offering that depth of insider knowledge is what will become more important.
Taking a slightly different angle, we there is very much a baseline expectation that we are leveraging AI, and I'll just use AI. I know legal tech's broader than that, but would it be a panel event if we talk about it? We I encourage anyone, you may have seen it, the Shopify CEO's manifesto on AI. Yeah. Read it, because this is I think what is coming if it hasn't already arrived for your businesses. It's table stakes. It's not an option. You have to lean in, and it's the culture now at Immutable. We're all used to the saying, "Do more with less" as lawyers in in-house teams. I think that will never go away. But now there's another version of that is do more with AI. Or do more and leverage AI. Yeah. So that is very much part of our culture, and how we are doing that. Well, we have company-wide hackathons where it's very rare to get a leave pass for a whole day, let alone 2. And we took 2 whole days as a company to sit down and just devote ourselves to what are the repetitive processes, what are the things we can do to level up our commercial goals through the use of AI. And we now have a permanent person whose role has completely shifted to being this transformational leader of AI projects within the business. And I would say legal is squarely in the crosshairs. Yeah. They are looking at us to work out how we can drive efficiencies as a team. So, for example, we do a lot of marketing, but given the space we're in, we need to be very careful about what we say publicly. And so legal has to look at it. But we can give them a sandbox. We can feed an AI model and we can say, here's the sandbox, here's the ground rules, here are the foundations, and create a bot around that. And at least then they have to interact with that first before they come to us. So the level that they're interacting with us is more sophisticated. We know that they've already ingested our preset guidance before they're asking us, is this okay, is it not? And it's not to say they'll be dispensed with legal teams, they absolutely should not. But it will hopefully level up that sophistication and drive efficiencies for us to focus on more strategic stuff.
So good. Is there resistance to AI, using AI in legal teams or in-house teams?
I don't think, I find AI tools very helpful and I think they're useful. I think one of the challenges perhaps is for maybe junior lawyers coming up and losing the ability. Sometimes you learn by doing some of that sort of repetitive task work, writing prospectuses or things like that that you would otherwise do, and then learn things as you were going through that process might be skipped. But certainly we're seeing a lot of the AI proficiency. I mean, it's now built in our Perform and Grow targets. What tools are you using? What's your proficiency? And it's built into our recruitments as well now. So you have to outline those. There's an expectation to see those in CVs.
Thanks. Sorry, Manny. Sorry, I was just going to press pause. We just passed the halfway mark. Questions? One here, one here, one here.
Okay, let's go over here.
Okay, if you could introduce yourself. Yeah. If you could introduce yourself as well, please.
Adrienne Gabe from People First Bank. We've talked a lot about what, as senior leaders, we want from our teams, but when you're engaging external counsel, because there's always times we have to use them, what do you want from them today that's different from what you wanted from them 10 years ago, or what you thought you should have been delivering to your customers when you were in private practice?
Who wants to take that one first? Ivana, go for it.
I'm happy to take it, and we can bounce it around. Look, I think I want to ideally really know the provider well, and in fact, it's not me knowing them, it's also them knowing me, so that they know the business. And your role as in-house counsel, you obviously have much bigger visibility of what goes on, but when someone has that longevity of knowing you, then out of the 15 questions they have, you only need to explain 5, they know the other 10. I also want them to be proactive, so they know that if I am asking them a question, they know that it's because someone else is asking me a slightly different question. So quite often, the proactive providers will not only give me the answer to my question, but they'll go, here's bullet points for the CEO that I can amend. So they're kind of one step ahead, proactively thinking, we know your business so well, but we know this is now happening in the market, so maybe you want to know that as well. So that's one concrete example of what else I want from them now, not just legal advice. And the fact that I need their advice to be practical goes without saying. So 30 pages for 30 grand for tell me that the law is uncertain, or to tell me that the safest legal option is A, means that there's going to be a phone call, because that is useless to me. So yeah, commerciality, give me options. You know our risk appetite, you know we have it, give me 3 things to go from.
Nice. Kylie, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say very similar to Ivana. You really, for external counsel, I'm always looking for really strategic advice at that level. If I just want to understand the risks of something, I have a hunch on that myself and I can GPT it, right? So I can get a list of risks if that's all I wanted. But I want to view, I want to understand where they see it on the risk spectrum. I want to understand, okay, if I went with this option, what's the compromise and what's the cost? Give me things that I can work with, that I can take back and I can, sort of base a decision on. I need information that I can base a decision on. That's important.
Yeah, go for it, Al.
Yeah, and I'd echo all of that, completely agree. I think, just to be super candid, a really useful heuristic for external providers would be to ask yourself, what is going to make my in-house GC look good in front of their stakeholders? Ask yourself that question, because that's how we will often measure up the service we're getting. In addition to all the commerciality points, completely agree, and I guess that probably hasn't changed. That was the same 10 years ago, but it continues to have to be a focus. I would just say, we're quite particular about ways of working, so know our business, yes, and then also know the way I like to work as a GC, and we like to work as a legal team, and we like to work as a company. So that can filter down to anything, like the way we want costs reported, WIP reports, all that kind of stuff, the way we want advices delivered, frequency of touch points, all that kind of stuff. Get to know the way we like to work.
Yeah, legal counsels external counsel now just need to be more dynamic, right? Yeah.
We'll take one more question, please.
Hi, Ruth Wood, Legal and Risk for St Vincent's, New South Wales facilities. I wanted to ask a question about adjacent or quasi-legal function like risk. We're currently navel-gazing about our operating model for the whole of group, and I expect risk will sit with legal despite different schools of thought on that. Just wondering about resourcing for that and whether you think we need specialists or legal with risk expertise. We've got a bit of a mix of that. Just wondering on your thoughts.
Yes, risk sits within my function, and it's definitely embedded within the function. But we do have a risk management specialist who is responsible for rolling out that program across the whole group. So I don't have an issue with it sitting within the legal function. I know that there is a difference of opinion with that, but certainly if you have the right people engaged within the team that do have that level of expertise, then I think it's suitable for it to be embedded within that function.
I mean, Kylie, you created a risk management function, you were saying, in 2 of the last, workplaces. So yeah, maybe you would have some insights there.
Yeah, so it depends, I suppose, on some of the nature of the risks that you have. Like, I'm sure Alice has probably some quantitative risks that you have to do in terms of the blockchain work, and certainly banking and finance would have levels of very quantitative risk. In terms of qualitative risk, I think we run it from the legal function, but we don't outsource it to risk professionals. We've got a system that runs functional and cross-functional. They build their own functional registers which roll up to the board, and we sort of do a periodic review over those, just a Boston Squares, likelihood and function. And so we review that regularly, and we do sort of case drop-downs in that space, and then specialists for functions and regulatory space, and I think is the difference.
But I suppose looking at it broader, not just looking at it from a risk perspective, what we have been talking about though is, lawyers, technical expertise or technical excellence is a given, and there almost needs to be adjacencies, adjacent skills or technicalities that you do have in order to really add value in this, now, but also in this future where legal tech can deliver a lot of the value that we're currently doing on just the purely legal side of things. Do we think that's true, or do we think that GCs can just rely on that technical ability?
I mean, speaking from personal experience, it's simply not enough just to be the lawyer. Sitting in that GC role, you are a legal ops manager now, you're a people manager, you have that seat at the strategic table, and depending on the size of your team, you may also still be an individual contributor. So like to your point about being T-shaped, you're horizontal and vertical. So yeah, I think the role is multifaceted.
Love that, the T-shaped lawyer. It's good. Okay, just switching gears, because we're going to sort of flip the switch on the question, because we've talked a lot about what GCs want of their in-house team, but what do you think in-house lawyers are expecting of their GCs? And do you think that you've got the time to be able to give it to them?
I love that question, and I loved Georgie's keynote on that.
It was a great keynote.
It was excellent, and I think as leaders we need to be asking ourselves, what does the team need from us? I am of the school of thought that optimizing the team means that you achieve your objectives. So if we think our objective is to achieve the company goals, the way you do that is to not stand in the way of your team, to figure out what the team needs so you can give them that, overcome any obstacles. And I think to do that, you need to be asking the question. It's okay not to know, or not to assume to know everything. So ask your team and then act on that feedback, but also know that you're dealing with a lot of different people so that you will have lots of different views, and that's okay, but you need to figure that out. And as I learned many years ago, I wanted to reward someone with a promotion, thinking, oh my God, they're doing so great, but I didn't tell them about it until it was like, congrats, here's your promotion, and they said, I don't want a promotion. And so it was a really good lesson that you need to speak to people, even with the best of intentions. That is not someone's idea of what they want. And this doesn't apply just to how they like to be rewarded, but what they are interested in, what they want to do, how they work best.
And how they learn.
How they learn,
which,
exactly.
The new generations coming through is very different to the way that we would have learned.
Absolutely, with tech as well now in the view.
Yeah. Because, at LV we have, multiple generations, and we have people who this is their very first job coming fresh out of uni, And I remember, it was only a couple of weeks ago, I was sitting in a meeting giving a training session on productivity, and there was about 20 people in the room, and this is their first week, and they were all just staring and multitasking on their phones, and I just thought, they're probably learning better than I did back in the day, but they're just trained on multitasking and learning in a very different way. But yeah, does anyone want to comment on that, on what lawyers expect, and I suppose this generation of lawyers coming through, what they expect, and whether, and what we need to do to sort of meet their expectations?
I think, if you have high performers, they should want opportunities for growth. So you should be helping them find that, and being an ambassador for that, and invested in their development. Again, everything that Georgie said is more or less an echo chamber here. But I think also, in an in-house legal team, when you are getting a high volume of diverse requests all the time, there are more asks than time to do them. So how do you help your teams work out where they should spend their time? And often that is a frequent problem that will filter up to the GC or the head of team role. So you've got to enable them, help them prioritise, and then that comes back to, well, how well embedded are you with the company's strategy? Because it's only by knowing the strategy that you're able to then go through that triage and filtering exercise.
I often think, in my experience from the younger lawyers that have worked with me, is one of the things that they really want is experience. And I know that there's a little bit of a narrative that sort of says experience is sort of dead for lawyers. There's some that think, if you're smart and young, you can go out, you can do it all, and that, being a senior lawyer, maybe, it's a bit stale. I think stale is stale at any sort of year and age, and I think it's really important to be relevant. But I think one of the things that I've found really useful is, and it's pretty old school really, it's the old shadowing model. It's being able to be at the board meetings, coming to the strategy sessions, even if you're minute taking. It's being at the table when we're negotiating, seeing how deals are done. It's being part of all of that. And I think that's really important. I remember I had and I think also just before you're ready is always important. And I remember I had a partner who said to me, your job is to do my job, and leave me with nothing to do. And I think that's a really important thing, and I try to pass that on, is, take the responsibility, take the experience. I'm here, but, I think that really helps develop people.
And I love that, the shadowing. Two questions from that, and actually one question, one comment. The comment is, I've always sort of managed direct reports so that they're better than me, and I think it echoes, because I would love for them to make me redundant. That's in my mind. But the second thing on shadowing, do you find it difficult to give people those shadowing opportunities when a lot of people are remote working, or there's an expectation of remote work?
So in my experience, the lawyer that works with me, pretty much, if I'm in, will always come in. And I think that's sort of testimony to how much enjoying that experience is to work together. But it is more challenging, definitely more challenging with remote work.
I manage a team remotely, so I'm based in Brisbane, but my team is spread across the eastern seaboard. And we do have offices in Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane, but that really provides an opportunity for my lawyer in Sydney to have that direct contact with stakeholders. And even though he's quite junior, because he's developed those relationships internally within the business, key stakeholders will actually come to him for advice, and he obviously knows when to escalate it to me, and it needs discussion. But I think it's been a great development opportunity for him because he's been in the deep end in that regard. So managing a team remotely is difficult, but I don't think it's prevented professional opportunity from being created. Yeah.
Great. Did anyone else have any comments on that one?
I'll add one more thing we haven't mentioned yet, which is physical safety, psychological safety rather. Studies and leadership studies show that of all of the different things that people on teams want, without that one thing, you can't have high-performing teams. So I think it's how you make your team comfortable to be vulnerable. And again, Georgie did such a fabulous job of reinforcing a lot of those messages, making it fine to fail. So I think your job as a leader is also to give your people the ability and at least to know when they're taking a huge leap that you support them, so that if there was a mistake, it's not too big a mistake. So they need to be able to learn from those mistakes. Psychological safety, I think, is a huge one.
Yep, totally. And I love the vulnerability. Brené Brown, love all of her books. Also, another book on leadership, which I make all of our leaders at Legal Vision read, is Kim Scott's Radical Candor, which is just brilliant, and it talks a lot about psychological safety and developing those relationships. Have we got more questions?
Yeah, we had 2 hands. One hand, yeah. Let's take one if we can, and then, yeah.
And I'm very conscious that we didn't really talk much about expectations for service providers, but that's because it's more interesting to hear about expectations for in-house counsel, to be honest. We know what you guys want.
It's because there's more than 10 things.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's coming now with this question. Adrian Trouble from Hive Legal. We know that feedback is great. We want as much as possible, but we also know that your job is very busy and we don't want to annoy you all the time. In your personal opinion, what's the best way to elicit feedback before it becomes crisis point for team members and for service providers?
I'll jump in because we're not sure, but when you say feedback, is it to team members? Team members or yeah. Okay. Sure. Look, I would say do it timely. To me, feedback, if I'm thinking of a team member, the best way that they will learn is if I do it in real time as soon as possible after, so that they had the opportunity, they know what's happened and they know they can get better from it. And I think the other things about feedback that are really important is to be kind. This is not your opportunity to have a go, but to be really clear. I mean, if you're a fan of Brené Brown, you'll know that in her book she talks about being so kind about the feedback that she didn't give any feedback. Like she didn't give the person the opportunity to improve. So be really clear about it and do it as soon as possible when you can in private. You don't do the feedback in public.
Ruinously empathetic is what they say, what Kim Scott calls it, where you're so kind that you end up just ruining them.
And, and they say that's the worst quadrant to be in, actually.
Yeah, so, totally. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
All right. Priya had her hand up, and then that would be the last one. Just give me a sec.
We just talk too much.
Hi, Priya Lele from She Breaks the Law. Just shifting gears slightly and very curious about, again, external counsel bit, but you all kind of touched upon it a little bit, but we didn't quite get there. So I'm really curious to see, in terms of your expectations from your external counsel and in this Gen AI, era, how has that changed? What do you expect from your external counsel in terms of how they're using Gen AI?
So first of all, we'll be using it. So there's probably going to be some impact on what then comes to you, whether it's a complete replacement, I doubt it, or we just bring, like our business, a more sophisticated or further developed set of questions. And then we expect you to be using it as well. So big doc reviews, big M&A due diligence, if you're not using it, we're going to be asking why. And if you are using it, we're going to be asking how you're calibrating it, all that kind of stuff.
So when you're briefing external counsel, are you now saying, we expect you to use AI here, so I want to see a reduction in price?
I don't think the conversation's got there yet, but we will it will be a question that we will be asking for sure.
Great, love it.
Priya, this was one of the questions that we didn't get to actually. That's why
sorry.
many laughed.
My fault. I wasn't a very good moderator.
But it is, no, we just talk too much. But just on that point, I feel like the first answer I want to give you is yes, law firms should be using AI. And so the natural expectation from GCs is to see costs go down. And so I haven't seen that yet, and I felt like this is really a question for law firms. So I did my due diligence before this and asked anonymously a whole heap of partners about, what's the status, what's the latest. So apart from this, the alternative service providers, which all operate on a fixed fee or value basis, which is not time-based, a lot of the law firms are watching this space. So they're all, I feel like they're watching what the other is going to do, who's going to blink first, because things are happening. They're not just there yet, but what I'm hearing is watch this space and something will happen.
Love it, like a Western standoff. Everyone's just sitting there waiting, who's going to pull the AI trigger first? Is there any other questions?
Many, actually, we're out of time, but the team downstairs still has a couple of minutes. So maybe if you could close us out with what your thoughts are on the topic.
Well, look, I think it's pretty clear. I mean, what GCs want from their in-house legal teams is, you want it all. But, technical excellence is a given. and it's an expectation of our role. But what we want here is commerciality, a sense of strategy, a sense of curiosity about businesses, and being enmeshed in the business and operations at a real sort of granular level, so that you're not caught off guard, but you can also be a partner in making decisions and taking the business forward. And look, that's not easy. That's not easy to find that type of person, and it's also not entirely easy when you've got really busy, stressful jobs to cultivate that. So I sort of get that sense. And in terms of what you want from your external service providers, it's a bit similar. You're not just expecting the 30-page advice. What you want is some strategy, commerciality, pragmatism, but also a business partner, someone who's trusted, understands what you need and can deliver it. And has that necessarily changed? I think it really has. I think you can see that shift. I mean, we've all been in this profession for a very long time. The last 20 years, I can see a seismic shift in lawyers just going from being black letter to now being more business minded, and I think it's a good shift. I think it's going to hold us in really good stead in this new future that we see ourselves in. But yeah, does anyone? Is that it?
That's it. If you have any other questions, please find your panelists during the break.
Thank you so much, panelists.
Big round of applause, please, for Manny, Alice, Ivana, Joni, Kylie. What GCs want. All right, so we've got one more session and then we've got lunch. So hold on, lunch is going to be served right here in the coffee area. We're going to open up these doors and then you'll be able to eat. But before we do, the next session right here in the Ninja Arena is around how to handle IP issues. And then in the workshop space downstairs, it's the future of diversity, equity, and inclusion and how to handle resistance. So DEI, very, very, very hot topic. That's downstairs. And then right here is IP. So make a decision and you have 1 minute. All right, intellectual property, trademarks, copyrights, patents, all that cool stuff. You're in the right place if you want to listen about intellectual property. If you'd like to hear more about the future of DEI and how to push back when there is resistance, head downstairs to the secret room. The popcorn cart is gone, so if you didn't get any popcorn, that's okay. Our friends at Law Squared have brought some popcorn with them, and I believe it's caramel or sweet popcorn, so it looks pretty good. But please do take a seat. How to handle IP issues is up next. So we have a video that we want to play from our friends at McCullough Robertson, and Melissa from the firm is moderating the panel on IP, which is just coming up. But before we do that, man, let's play the video. Excellent. Thank you to the team in McCullough Robertson that's been supporting us for quite a few of our Ninja events. The topic is how to handle intellectual property issues. Right here, if you're looking for DEI, you're in the wrong room. DEI is downstairs in the secret room, so do head down. They're just about to get started. But if you're looking to learn more about IP, you're in the right place. Our moderator today is Melissa Miller, partner in McCullough Robertson. Our panelists are Kayla Ford, head of IP legal at Canva, Kelly Kim, legal counsel at Michael Castle Group, Lily Dent, senior director, general counsel for ANZ at PepsiCo, and Nancy Campisi, company secretary and legal officer at Lifeline Australia. Big round of applause, please, for our speakers. All right, so before we begin, just a heads up that if you're out the back or in the coffee room and you're chatting, sound does travel a little bit more if you're at the back, so just keep that in mind when our panelists are up on stage. Lily, just so you know, my mom came just to watch you in action as well. She's right at the back. Without further ado, Melissa, over to you. Just have to flip it up, the switch.
For a technology lawyer, I am lacking that skill. Thanks everybody, I'm absolutely delighted to be here today representing my awesome firm McCullough Robertson. I am a partner in the digital and IP team. I specialise in intellectual property and technology, and I'm here with an awesome panel of IP specialists, and we're going to take you through some real issues that I think touch everybody. And I like to say that everybody needs an IP lawyer, they just don't know it yet. I spend a lot of my time validating my existence. No. So I think it's really exciting because the panel here actually represents very different industries. We've got, well, I'm going to let my panel here do their own introductions, but you'll see FMCG, billion-dollar companies, startups that have now become, again, billion-dollar companies from startup to IPO in Canva. We've got the not-for-profit sector with Nancy. Sorry, Lily, I should have said your name too, and then you will do your intros. Nancy is in the not-for-profit sector, but she also brings a wealth of experience from her prior role at Garvin. And Kelly is comes from Michael Castle Group and the entertainment space. So as you can see, hopefully, I believe you'll be able to resonate with what the panel has to say. So without further ado, I'm sharing my microphone with Lily.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Lily Dent. I'm the General Counsel at PepsiCo ANZ. Rowan's dad actually hired me some 13 years ago, so that's why I know Rowan and his mum, Kitty.
On? Yes, okay. Hi, I'm Kayla Ford, Head of IP Legal at Canva. So we're responsible for all things IP at Canva.
We'll leave it on for the next group.
Thank you. Melissa, do you want us to go into more of our background or just introduce who we are?
Introduction, and then we can start if you like.
Yeah, okay, so Nancy Campisi. My role's recently changed actually. We've inherited risk and compliance in our group. So I'm Executive Director for Governance, Legal and Risk at Lifeline Australia.
Hello, my name's Kelly. I'm Legal Counsel at Michael Castle Group. We are a live entertainment and musical theatre production company. So we produce lots of live shows.
Awesome. Actually, while you've got the microphone, Kelly, I think it'd be helpful if we could hear from you first on, what types of IP does your organisation deal with and that comes up for you?
Yeah, sure. So we're in the live entertainment space, so we deal with a broad range of IP, but predominantly focused on creative assets and performance rights. So copyright, a lot of copyright. Everything you see on stage has ownership attached, so scripts, lyrics, choreography, costume design, set design, all of that. And performance rights, so securing rights to be able to actually produce and present shows.
Awesome. We might just go in order, if that's okay for this one. I'd love to hear from all of you. Nancy.
Sure. Lifeline Australia is a well-known brand, and I guess the brand is the biggest asset. So we have quite a few other trademarks besides the Lifeline Australia trademark, so that's probably our biggest portfolio in IP. But we also have copyright in some of the training materials that we prepare, and we have a lot of other intellectual property that I haven't quite got my head around yet.
Kayla.
Yeah, pretty much a broad spectrum, copyright and all of the content we have on the platform, increasingly AI technologies, visual content, music, video, trademarks, obviously our brand, patents, designs, probably everything except plant breeders' rights, but I wouldn't put it past Canva either to be getting into that.
At Pepsi, obviously, we have one of the world's biggest brands. We also, you might not know, but PepsiCo also does food side of the business. So we actually have some plant breeders' rights. So I know a lot about potatoes, as does Steve from McCain. If he's here, you can talk to us about spuds if you want to. And then we also have, I guess, patents and designs in terms of manufacturing and packaging. So especially a lot of research and development that we're doing in sort of sustainable packaging or things to make our products healthier. So, there's some things that we've done over the years to, for example, reduce the amount of sodium in our chips, but make them still taste fantastic. So a really broad range. But also I'd say on the flip side, we also, acquire and do a lot of licensing and sponsorships. So getting the rights to use other people's brands. And the most recently, we just announced a partnership with F1, which is massively exciting, and there are huge fights within the company already about who's going to get some tickets.
Thanks so much. So I'd love to know, I suppose, with all those different types of IP and coming from your very different organisations, could you each give me a sense of what your organisation's organisational approach is in terms of managing IP? I'd love to hear from Kayla first. Kayla has been with Canva for a number of years and we've all seen the success of Canva from startup to, can I say nearly IPO? Yeah, can I say that? Right, and I understand your team has grown massively in that time. So could you share with us what that's been like and I suppose how you've seen that management of intellectual property change over that time?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I've had an interesting perspective of seeing really a legal team being built from the ground up. I joined 6 years ago as the third lawyer in the team, and I think maybe some of our team members can confirm, I think we've got about 75 lawyers now. So it's been a huge amount of growth in that time for the legal team and also the company. And so I suppose in terms of, managing IP issues in those early days, and if you have a lean team now as well, is really just about ruthless prioritisation. What are kind of the key risks? We often talk about in tech the MVP, the minimum viable product. You can kind of apply that to legal too. Like, do we have some trademarks in our key markets? Have we thought about patents for some of our core algorithms? Have we got an agreement in place for this? If not, can we shoot off an email maybe to just try and get something in writing? Kind of just, I think Alice on the last panel spoke about scrappiness, really just trying to scrap together what you can, identify the key risks and deliver the MVP for what you need. And certainly when I was the only IP lawyer on the team, that was what I focused on, alongside also doing like privacy and employment and real estate, which I had no business doing, but you kind of have to do when you're early in a legal team. Now, we've got 12 amazing people on the IP team focusing on commercial licensing, trademarks. We've got 2 patent attorneys. So we really have the ability now to kind of dig in deeper on those things, build out strategies, and really embed ourselves in the business as well. So I think in terms of how Canva approaches it, we really want to make sure that we are kind of embedding IP within the business and having, our teams really be on board with that. So our engineers understand what's the difference between permissive and copyleft. We're not having to go and check all of these things, but it's just something that's part of their process. Our brand team understands trademarks. So yeah, I think really kind of getting them to partner with you and just make it part of the business and not something that, legal is just managing on our own. Yeah.
And could I ask, I guess, what's the North Star of how you can manage IP? Do you want to tackle that?
Yeah.
Or pass to Lily, perhaps? I'm not suggesting it's the North Star, but we'll hear from her in a minute.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it kind of depends on your company as well. Even really large companies might not have as big of an IP team as we have. If we look at the Googles, for example, they've got hundreds of patent attorneys. So ideally, as you grow, you can maybe start to take a lot of that work in-house, but certainly we still rely on external counsel for a lot of things because we just can't manage that volume ourselves. I guess North Star from our perspective would be able to bring as much of that in-house as possible, but you also have to think about resourcing and what's best for the business. So I think just ensuring what your core IP concerns are and making sure you can manage those, and then leaning on external counsel or increasingly technologies to help you manage that.
So within PepsiCo, we have a central IP team, which is located in the US, which I guess you'd probably expect. So they will manage filings of trademarks and patent applications and things like that around the world. Obviously, sometimes you need to have that coordinated effort, but we still use external counsel to do that for us in every market. So sometimes it can be a little bit roundabout in that, Australia will shoot off an email to our US team and say we want to apply for this trademark, and then they shoot off an email to our Australian legal counsel. But then if there's local issues, generally the team will deal with that ourselves unless it's something bigger, than the US IP team will look after it.
And obviously as external legal counsel, it would be amiss of me to not say that I'm often advising clients or prospective clients how important we think it is to have that centralised IP management. It just certainly we have the technology, the law firms have the technology to be able to just make that a lot easier. This is not a plug, but I think it's actually something I hope that most of you know, is that if you have one firm that hopefully then takes that responsibility and corresponds with agents around the world, that will make that does make, I think, your life easier than having what I see a lot of the time, decentralised portfolios that can create issues when there's not that cohesive oversight. But moving on from, brands are still very important, but could you share, Nancy, your organisational approach at Lifeline and maybe how that's been different from...
Yeah, so I was the first legal counsel at Lifeline last year, and when I came in, we used, and we still use, an external firm to do trademark applications and maintenance. But there was a missing piece around then how those trademarks are used, what you can do with them, who can use them. The Lifeline model is a federated model. So we have 17 members around Australia, and they get a licence from Lifeline Australia to use the brand. But sometimes they go off spec and they use the brand in ways that we haven't, consented to, or is not in their agreement, their trademark license agreement. So that is a part of my role that I want to tighten up. The other thing is too that on the trademark portfolio, we've got 30 plus trademarks, and some of them have no use anymore, but they've still been maintained. And on the other hand, there are some trademarks that we've been using which haven't been registered. So, Yeah, the management part and the education, I think, piece around the staff and the members in our network is probably the biggest thing for me at the moment.
And Kelly?
For us, I think it's a little bit different just due to the nature of what we do. For us, I think the key thing from the get-go is strategic IP planning. So before we actually do any show, and before we're even starting negotiations with any licensors for our licensed shows, we need to sit down at a round table, as in legal, business affairs, production, finance, and really kind of look at what IP is involved and what do we want to do with it? Like, what's our plan? What's our short-term plan? What's our long-term plan? For example, Hamilton, which was one of our shows, we had to look at, do we want to tour this? Do we want it just in Australia? Do we want to go overseas? What's our 5-year plan for this show? And do we want to remount in 10 years' time? And so having a really clear strategic IP planning, and that can take years. So for large shows, this can take like years, like 3, 4, 5 years of going through key, going through with key creatives what those obligations are, what rights we can have. And yeah, so that's strategic IP planning. And then of course we've got trackers for each show. And that document is predominantly owned by the production team because they're the ones dealing. Once we've signed license agreements and creative agreements and all of that, it's kind of passed on to the production team because they're the ones dealing one-on-one with each of the creatives. So this tracker will go through kind of like a summary as to what the rights are, royalty, obligations, any approval rights, and approval requirements and processes. With licensed shows like Hamilton, for example, the approval rights are really, stringent, and there's a whole process that we have to go through. So managing all of that, and then of course, I think the last portion for us is education and collaboration just with internal stakeholders, because IP really affects almost every single one of our departments. So I think we're really trying to build a culture of understanding IP and really knowing the importance of it.
Yeah, and the importance of thinking about it first and getting it right in the contracts. So if I can tease out, how important it is for you in your all of your organisations, but on managing the IP rights in the contract. There seems that there's a lot of levers we need to pull. So, are you happy to talk to that first?
Yeah, sure. Like I said, the initial thing is for us is the key document, which is the license agreement, and this license agreement deals with absolutely everything. What rights we're securing, where can we go, what can we do, what the royalty obligations are. And sometimes with license agreements for really large shows, it's not just one document. It may come with a whole host of other operating documents. So, and each of those operating documents, for example, all these creative agreements that we have to, comply with, and sometimes we have room for negotiations, obviously, but then also managing each of those negotiations so that if we do want to remount the show in 5 years' time, are we able to get all the creatives on board? Because in order to put on a show, we need all the creatives on board. So, yeah.
Sounds like you've got a really sophisticated system there. What's your tracker called? Is it proprietary? Do you license it? Nancy, could I hear from you on that same question actually, because I think it'd be great to hear your perspective.
Yeah, so I might just speak a little bit more about the experience at Garvan, and prior to that I was in the UNSW Technology Transfer Office, which does commercialisation of IP. So quite a lot of IP comes out of projects, collaborations that researchers were working on. And it's kind of, you don't know what you've got yet, don't know what you're going to have. So I found that there was a lot of negotiation and discussion about what might eventuate. But I guess going back to that strategic piece, what do you want to get out of this project at the end. I kind of tried, when I was doing these negotiations, I worked with the business people and the researchers. Of course, the researchers always think that their thing is going to be fantastic and that everybody's going to want it, and they want to own it. So ownership, I don't think, is necessarily the way to go all the time. Sometimes you just need to have the right to use it and the right to get a license. And there's so many other things that you've got to think about. Is if it's a patent, for example, there'll be fees. If there's an infringement, there'll be defence costs. So who's going to look after that part of it? And I guess the only other thing I would probably say is that in a research type environment, if there's third party IP that's being used, that's got to be, the right to use that down the track has to be secured, so that if an invention arises out of the collaboration, then you're not precluded from commercialising that because you don't have those other rights. So I think the strategy is a big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you want to add to that, Kayla, or pass?
Oh yeah, it did really resonate. So we're increasingly in the AI space. We're actually doing a lot of research collaboration, and often I think researchers are just very focused on kind of building things, researching things, but you actually have to think about the end point of that, which is commercialization. So yeah, absolutely making sure the lawyers have looked up front to make sure you're not going to be stopped in your tracks. Yeah.
Lily, if I could ask you to talk me through, I suppose, what's been your experience in managing situations where IP hasn't been perhaps looked at or might have been missed? Is there a scenario, completely anonymously, without naming names, where you've had to deal with an IP issue being overlooked, that you could share how you deal with that?
I guess a classic example was during our product development, so marketing coming up with the name for a product and then not actually telling us about that until very late in the stage when packaging designs have all been made, and you almost instantly recognise that there's an issue. So we've definitely had that in the past. Now we've built into the process that legal's brought in very early on, and names are run past us first. And then I think another example, I feel like the universe knew that I was going to be talking on an IP panel because it's just sent me some IP hot potatoes this week and last week. So got an issue at the moment where it's about representations and warranties and indemnities in relation to IP. So a supplier saying they're not going to move forward with a project until we give them some very broad reps, warranties and indemnities. And so sometimes the challenge is actually trying to figure out whose IP is what, because in this instance they want IP for a whole product, and but what I'm learning is actually the supplier owns half of the IP in the product. So I'm trying to work the way through the ambiguity, and sometimes when you're dealing with large organisations, you're dealing with someone who's just a messenger, and so you're trying to find the person who might be based overseas that actually knows about this topic so that you can try and resolve it.
I think a lot of us can resonate with someone from marketing running away with an idea before getting it checked with the legal team, so I think that's really relevant. How do your organisation, or how do you, as a general counsel or legal counsel, manage stakeholders that? Actually, I think we've already addressed this question, so I might move on to another one. Could I ask? Would anyone like to share another cautionary tale through that's come out of perhaps people, stakeholders, different levels not being aware of IP until it's too late? Love to hear from that.
Not a Lifeline example, but a Garvin example, and I can share this. I'm not going to go into the details of what it was. Chatham House rules, yeah. We used to have researchers coming to us and say, I've got this great idea and I would like to you to sort of look into filing a patent application. And then we'd find out that they've already spoken about it at a conference or something. So it's kind of like really disappointing for them because it's too late and there's been no confidentiality agreements or anything. So I think that's a cautionary tale. And again, I think that's about education and people just understanding that there's a process. And I think patents is a really good example of where, there's timelines and you've got to get in at the right time. And you try and protect, if you're having commercial in confidence conversations and talking about your IP or potential IP, to have a confidentiality agreement in place.
Everyone's nodding. I think we all agree. NDA is first step. That's pretty much the first thing I say. Whether that's in an agreement you have with your consultant, it's the confidentiality provisions there, because as soon as you've lost confidentiality in an invention, you've lost the ability to patent it. And following from another, feel like I can't resist sharing, lessons learned really, which is, particularly if something ends up being patentable, that you can't assume that just because someone within your organisation developed it, that you as the employer owns it. That is the case in terms of copyright, but that is not the case, the default position in the Patents Act. So you do need an assignment of that IP. So I would encourage you to look at your employment agreements and your, obviously, consultant agreements, and getting those actual, whether it's a confirmatory IP assignment or, oh crap, we actually don't have anything, we have to get that assigned to us before, ideally before you've applied, but actually it's okay in Australia as long as before it's been granted. So.
Hi Mel, sorry, I'm just pressing pause.
Halfway.
We're past the halfway point. We've got 15, 16 minutes left and lunch beckons. So any questions? One question, anything else? Two questions? All right, I'll do this one because it's closer. If you could introduce yourself as well, please, and you get chocolates for good questions.
Thank you. My name's Cicely Silo. I'm with the Burden Group. I've just got a question about, I think it's, the challenges of when, you've progressed through a creation, and it might be, I'll direct this to Lily if that's okay, just because of your manufacturing background. And around, bringing parties together, because once you've, gone part way through the path, down the pathway, and then, there's something of value, do you have any tips or tricks on how to reset the agreements that you've got, or to, to be able to commercialise an invention or a design or a manufacturing process? Because I think, how you get the parties back on track, because you can both win as opposed to both being losers. I'd love how you get to convince parties to move along into the right direction.
Yeah, I think it's about understanding, what's in it for each party. So what does each party want to leverage and what do they want to protect? And seeing if you can find a way that each party can achieve that, but you can still, use it. That's in the example that I just mentioned before. That's what I'm trying to get to the bottom of, and understanding where is this concern coming from. If you can explain it to me and help me understand it, then I'm sure we can find a way forward. But sometimes half the challenge is just getting that information.
Awesome. We had one more question. Yeah, Sophie. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Kate. I'm from Wallamai Capital Group. In my current role, which is relatively new to me, I'm doing a lot of trademarks work. And it feels to me like the trademarks world, you are at the whim, to some extent, of the trademark examiner who looks at your mark. And so the issue I'm coming up against is, the business wants certainty. Are we going to get this mark? And I cannot give them that answer, and maybe not for a long time. And I guess it's an issue lots of people must come across, but how do you manage that internally?
Yeah, I'm happy to have a go. So I think it's really about kind of bringing them along on that journey, you know, giving them case studies of other, you know, other marks and how they've kind of progressed or how they've been rejected, and just helping folks to understand that maybe it's not the end of the world if we don't get it trademarked. Like, what are you actually trying to achieve? So often we've now sort of had trademarks baked in sort of early in our product naming, and you know, I guess to give a pretty general example, but we've got this feature called background remover, which removes the background of a photo or video. Very descriptive. That really helps a user to go in and like figure out the job to be done there. You know, you think about all these fanciful names you could give it, you know, this is really core to Canva, people love it, we want to maybe give it a trademark so that it's like really unique. But actually, it's better just to keep the descriptive name and not worry about the trademark protection. And so I think if you can have the team thinking about that really early on, and like, is it actually really critical to get a trademark or not? What markets is it critical to get it in? You know, what is the different approach in Australia versus the US? And just kind of making them really a part of that decision-making process of how critical it is. And then if it is, okay, let's pursue it, but knowing it might not work out, it doesn't necessarily mean, you know, if there's no blocker, it doesn't mean you can't use the name. You just might not have those exclusive rights around it. So I think just really like education and making it part of their process, not just something that legal's sort of trying to get for you. Yeah.
Sometimes we give the business like a percentage probability of a trademark being able to get registered, and so, you know, we'll give them the opportunity of, hey, marketing, do your thing, maybe come up with some other ideas and we can tell you whether you've got better chances of getting that trademarked.
And also I think just understanding the process in the IP Australia office about trademarks and what an opposition is, if that's what it is that you're coming up against, or, you know, can you fight it? And in a lot of cases you actually can go back and get legal advice and go back, and sometimes you might be lucky and it will go through, but I think if they understand the process as well as have the backup, that's probably a good way to go.
All right, we've got one more question here, was it? Yeah.
Thank you. My name's Alexis, and I just wanted to ask the panel generally, I don't work, we have a very large, I would say somewhat not necessary trademark portfolio, which I think is probably more common than not. Because I think about sort of 10 or 15 years ago, obviously it was extremely valuable to have your trademark registered. I was wondering whether this very experienced specialised panel could comment on whether the value in registration has become a bit diminished in the age of heightened information sharing, where everyone kind of knows who is actually behind a product or a service, or the ability for the population to know who is behind, who owns or produces a product or a service is somewhat heightened, and where we have this phenomenon of the dupe economy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really, really interesting question. I think there's probably a difference in markets. I think for us in a lot of emerging markets, or at least emerging markets for us, you know, South America in particular, if you don't have a trademark there, then the ability for someone to just grab your brand and run with it is just so easy. And then all of a sudden you can have someone essentially running your business in one of those emerging markets under your brand, and they were the first to file, and that's sort of the end of the story. So I think there is definitely still a lot of value there. You know, it might be different, you know, in particular markets, but I do just think it's that because there is so much access and so much ability for people to kind of quickly spin up businesses and social media pages that look really legitimate. And even more so with AI, you can have a full website that before you would have needed someone to code for you now looks really professional. And if you don't have the ability to, you know, go to domain registrars, you need a trademark in order to get those websites taken down. So I think it's actually some of those process things that a trademark, in my view, is still incredibly valuable, because otherwise you won't be able to stop that from getting away from you. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it kind of depends on the situation. So I think my view with
PepsiCo's in the past, we've been really crazy about trademarks and filing for everything, which we really don't need. So we're becoming much more strategic about what we will actually file a trademark for. But sometimes you find that you are blocked from a market. So we've got a situation where we've got a great product in New Zealand that we would love to sell in Australia, and I get every 2 years or so when the senior management changes over, I get asked the same question. Someone's like, I've got this brilliant idea, we can sell this product in Australia. And I'm like, it is a brilliant idea, but I'm sorry, you can't. Whereas our competitor has the reverse situation because of their trademark rights are stronger in Australia than our trademark rights are in New Zealand. So they've been able to sell their Australian product in New Zealand. So I think they're still really important. And as Kayla said, for domain names and for social media, so getting things taken down off of Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, trademarks are just gold. There's no question you can get things taken down really quickly. Without one, it's really hard.
I've got an example, which is a recent Lifeline example. We were alerted to late last week about a Facebook page which was Lifeline Financial Services, I think it was called. Looked like Lifeline, looked very legitimate. One of our clients, call them clients, got scammed in that way, and we were able to quickly write to Meta and get it taken down. So I think there is strength in the brand having that. But the other thing I wanted to just say is that it probably depends on like the core brand. I would say yes. But also what stage is your organisation at? Because if you are a startup and you're looking to be acquired, or an IPO, for example, somebody doing their due diligence probably would be looking for that certainty. So yeah, that's the other.
Absolutely. I think we're out of time. And am I right?
No, you have 7 minutes, but no, I think...
You threw me.
No, yeah, it's like a 20... You know
Here
the
I
TV
was.
show 24? It's like a ticking time bomb.
Excellent. We love
So like, maybe 5 minutes just because I think everybody's hungry.
Yeah.
So maybe Mel, if you could close us out potentially
absolutely.
with key thoughts or maybe one rapid fire question for everybody up to.
Sure. No, I would actually love if you could each share, your, it doesn't have to be your top tip, but if you could each share a tip for the GCs in the room on, I think we've heard that trademarks is still very important, and hopefully you're still, pushing for registration of your trademarks, but if you could each share a takeaway tip to close the session.
I think just trying to get in the business. I think it was said in the panel before about knowing what's coming. So you need to be involved in the room when the ideas are being thrown around and decisions are being made, so that you can, intervene early, whether that means getting the right agreements in place or stopping something because it's going to meet a dead end eventually, and you'd rather kill it sooner than later.
I think making sure you're not the only cheerleader for IP in the business, getting others on board. And I think that's also just about understanding the organisation's just philosophical approach to IP. Like, do we care about IP? Do we want to protect things? Or are we just wanting to open source everything and share everything with the world? How do we feel about that? I think understanding that from kind of the, I've had the benefit of seeing that from the founder level and from a smaller business growing, but I think if you can really understand that in your organisation and then bring others along on the journey because they know it's important to the business, just makes your life a lot easier.
So I would say one of the things that's important is training and awareness, and we've heard a little bit about AI this morning, and I guess training people so that they know not to use open systems to put their confidential information or their IP into their data into where they down the track might rely on it being able to be protected.
I think I'm probably repeating what everyone said, but it's definitely getting legal in early on, to be there when we're developing the IP, to have those conversations and to be involved in the initial stages, and also educating our internal stakeholders. I think for us, half the job is really reminding them that IP isn't about, it's not just a legal thing. It's not a legal issue, or it's not just a clause in the contract that we have to deal with, that it's actually, it affects everyone. Sometimes I can see our marketing team, sometimes they throw in free logos or free promo videos as part of the deals that they do. And so I find myself just reminding them that it's, our IPs, and they're not freebies. We pay royalties for these things. And so I think when they realise that, it starts to click. So yeah.
With that, I'd like to thank you to all join me in to thank this incredible panel, and I need some coffee. Thank you, panel.
Thank you so much, Mel, Kayla, Kelly, Lily, Nancy. That was fantastic and a great way to go into lunch. So, 3 big announcements. One is, we are going to close this wall right here. So if you're sitting here and you have bags or anything else, please take it with you, because these chairs are going to disappear. Second is lunch. We're going to have to queue up here. We're going to open up these magical doors, and the table is right behind these doors. So please do queue up right here in sort of 2 sides. And then the third thing is there's an ice cream stand. We've never had an ice cream stand at a Ninja Summit before. I'm very excited. We've got 4 amazing flavors. So once you've had your food, you can have ice cream, or like my old boss used to say, have dessert first. So please do queue up right here. Thank you.